Many thanks, Rob, and good afternoon, colleagues. We're starting a couple of minutes early, so starting off with a very, very private sector approach, which is not starting on time, but also starting earlier than the scheduled time, but of course that's always welcome. So again, good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be moderating this session titled Moving Beyond Transactions, how to fully integrate the private sector in humanitarian response. My name again is Mervat Shelbaya, and I head the UN's Interagency Standing Committee Secretariat, and it's really a pleasure to be with you today. So, colleagues, we know that crises are more complex, more frequent, and more prolonged, which is now further exacerbated as a result of the financial crisis, and that the humanitarian system is under pressure like never before. It's equally true that the private sector is now more active, more capable, and more motivated than ever to be part of the solution. Yet despite decades of collaboration from logistics and connectivity to financing and innovation, our partnerships too often remain transactional. A company donates goods, we say thank you, and we both move on to the next emergency. So colleagues, we're here today to explore how we can move beyond that model, from ad hoc donations and one-off engagements toward true partnerships that are built on shared trust, value, and long-term collaboration. Because when a company's core business, technology, and talent are brought to bear on humanitarian challenges, when it's not just about writing a check, but about co-creating solutions, that's when we start to see real impact, real scale, and real sustainability. So with that, I'm really, really thrilled to be joined today by 4 amazing and accomplished women who have all had many years of experience in fighting in the trenches of translating between humanitarian and private sector language and approaches. So we have Erin from Cisco, a company that's been part of the UN's emergency telecoms cluster for over 20 years, helping to connect communities when it matters most. We have Alison from Henry Sheen, a global health solutions company that's helped deliver vital medical equipment around the world. We have Elisa, who's joining us virtually online from Ecobank Foundation, representing Africa's first pan-African bank and a foundation redefining what philanthropy looks like on the continent. And last but definitely not least, Elodie from MasterCard, whose partnerships with WFP and other critical organizations have shown how private sector innovation can enable financial inclusion and digital resilience in emergencies. Together, they bring deep experience, and I suspect some very candid perspectives that will make these partnerships work and what still gets in the way. So let's kickstart, and I'll kickstart with Erin from Cisco. So Erin, you've worked with the UN and the humanitarian system for 2 decades. So let me ask you to kick us off with a proactive question. What could the UN do better? What could the UN do better in terms of developing real partnerships with the private sector? What have been some of the pain points or the challenges in your experience of building a long-term partnership on behalf of Cisco? So over to you, please, Erin.
All right. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on the panel. I'm thrilled to be here. So at Cisco, we have worked with the UN, the World Food Program, UNHCR, for close to 2 decades, but I would say our partnerships have gone beyond transactional to really being meaningful partnerships really in the last 5 years or so. And I would say a lot of that comes down to Cisco and how we're structured and some of the changes that we have experienced internally that's made it a lot easier to partner with nonprofit organizations as well as the UN. So our team merged our philanthropic group that provides cash and product donations with a technical team that deploys after emergencies to provide connectivity for response agencies and affected populations. About 5 years ago, we merged and rebranded as Cisco Crisis Response. And what that's allowed us to do is engage in a much deeper, more comprehensive way with our partners. So we've become official standby partners of the UN's Emergency Telecommunications Cluster. We became official standby partners for UNHCR's Refugee Emergency Telecommunications Sector, and we've been able to commit funding strategically, product donations, but we've also been able to use our own technical capacity to provide trainings, solutions consulting, to be able to engage in a much deeper way. And I think a lot of that has taken time. It's taken really figuring out the partnership during blue sky days and defining the respective roles and responsibilities so that we are able to effectively respond after crises. In terms of the pain points, I think the biggest challenge is really two very different organizational cultures. So the tech sector, I think, tends to move very fast, fail fast, break things. That's kind of the ethos within the tech sector. And then you're working with big UN agencies that are working very hard to mitigate risk, protect people, and by design, I think that moves a little bit slower. And so I think that's probably been maybe the bigger challenges is more around formalizing the partnerships. But I think if you have the people that are intent on doing the work together, I think we continue to do the work while some of the details are being formalized.
Brilliant. Many thanks, Erin. If you don't mind, I'm going to press you with a further question. And I know I should be doing it in the second round, but curious to hear from you now if it's okay. So with some of these pain points and the challenges, why do you persist? Why do you continue in pursuing this partnership with the UN agencies?
I think there's a lot of value in partnering with UN agencies. There's the broad geographic reach. With a lot of the work that we do, there's also the capacity that does exist within the UN and the role that they play as a convener, where it makes a lot of sense for us to plug in. As a private, tech company, we rely on the partners that are on the ground, that have the subject matter expertise that can help direct us to be able to deploy our technology and our people in a way that has the greatest impact. With our technology as well, working with the UN to get equipment into the country works very well. So there's a lot of value, a lot of impact that we see in partnering.
Brilliant. Many thanks, Erin. And it's good to know that particularly over the past 5 years, the relationship has evolved from one that is more transactional to one that is more partnership, built on partnerships and collaboration. So really, thanks for sharing both the positive as well as the challenges in that relationship. And completely hear your point around the pace as well, in terms of course, a tech company and being fast-paced and the challenges working with big UN agencies. Yet you persist and you see the value of that partnership to continue. So with that, I'd like to turn to Alison. So Alison, I know that Henry Schein has a very active program donating critical medical devices in countries all over the world. At the same time, your organization has been ready to make donations in emergencies multiple times over the past few years that haven't quite moved forward because of the obstacles in how you work with the humanitarian system. How can we address some of these obstacles and move companies and humanitarian organizations beyond philanthropy to establish more sustainable commitments to humanitarian response and disaster resilience?
Thank you very much. Yeah, and it's really a pleasure to be here with this esteemed panel and this wonderful audience. So Henry Schein is a global healthcare. Am I not on? Is it on? Can you hear me? Excellent. So Henry Schein is a global provider of healthcare products and services to healthcare practitioners around the world. We specialize in getting the precise products that are needed, when they're needed, and by whom they're needed, so that healthcare providers can focus on what they do best, which is providing care. Over the years, we've really focused on this area of disaster preparedness and response. And as you noted, that started with more ad hoc donations of product as we got requests, and other sort of in-the-moment interactions with public sector agencies, UN agencies, humanitarian organizations. We found that that wasn't the most effective way to partner, that there's one, we talk about in healthcare supply chain, the need to pre-position products. Well, you also need to pre-position relationships, and you need to have true partnerships with the organizations that you're working with to understand how they operate. As you said, Erin, we have very different operating models and sort of fundamental understandings sometimes, and that all really needs to be resolved and worked out in advance, so that in the time of a crisis, we can respond as quickly, efficiently, and effectively as possible and save lives. We've founded and participated in a number of different public-private partnerships. A great partner is here, Mike Griffin from the WHO. We've partnered for a long time on the Pandemic Supply Chain Network. I chair the Private Sector Roundtable on Global Health Security, which is focused on really deploying the core competencies and expertise of the private sector in response. And then all of us have participated in the Private Sector Humanitarian Alliance, which is another effort to really coordinate the private sector. But I would say we're now at a real inflection point where there's things. We're at the next stage, right? I think we went from more transactional, one-off relationships to public-private partnerships, and now I think for us to really change the paradigm in how the private sector engages in emergency response, it needs to be considered as part of the core business of our companies, and there's a real opportunity for us to really innovate, to co-create solutions with our agency partners and organizations and governments, and to identify gaps and work together to find solutions. But the only way to really capitalize on the best strengths of the private sector, I believe, are for us to be able to work together, not just sort of either on a sort of one-off basis or on a sort of tender basis of as a supplier, but let's be a true partner, a true strategic partner to help identify operational efficiencies. Apparently that was a great line, and I got a resounding applause. Operational efficiencies and best practices and innovation. Let's innovate together. So I think that's sort of the next frontier of how we really need to be engaging with one another, and a real opportunity for companies to sustain this work in a much more strategic and long-term innovative way.
Brilliant. Many thanks, Alison. If I may also ask you another question related to what you mentioned. And again, I really like what you stated around the importance of pre-positioning products and equally the importance of pre-positioning relationships. So that's where, again, as you said, not in times of crisis, but in prior to crisis, it's important to build relations so that when the crisis hits, there is that element of trust upon which we can build the relationship to do what's needed to help populations. So you mentioned that it needs to be considered in terms of, again, the private sector's engagement needs to be considered part of core business of companies. Do you see this happening at Henry Schein? And again, it was interesting to hear, again, with Cisco, some of the internal restructuring and the mergers that have happened to enable that. Do you see that happening in Henry Schein, or is it planned to happen? What is your advice to other companies to make sure that it's part of core business?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. And yes, over the past year and a half, we've really leaned into this area and decided to develop a new business area within the company focused on emergency preparedness and response. And what that meant was looking across our businesses at the variety of solutions that we have at our fingertips that we felt would be highest value to our partners, and creating an ecosystem of innovative solutions, and then being at the ready to co-create based on sort of this framework of solutions we have across our businesses. So yes, we sort of transitioned that work. Yes, we will always continue to be a philanthropic partner. We will always continue to do in-kind donations, and we will always be a ready partner that rolls up our sleeves in public-private partnerships. But I also think there's an opportunity for us to view this as a core part of our business and to lean into those solutions. And so we're not just sort of donating, but we're actually a true partner. To me, procurement is really where partnership becomes implemented in the most strategic way. So.
Brilliant. Many thanks again, Alison. Erin, I feel that you have a urgency to come in again. Well, please go ahead.
Just to add to that, I do think for us, it's our core business. I didn't mention Cisco is a tech company focused on security and networking. And so I think for us, when we talk about future-proofing our partnerships and our work, there does need to be a tie to business value and our core competencies and a complementarity of our core competencies. So I do think it is really critical for there to be that element where we are providing expertise, our products and services, and it's actually complementing that of our humanitarian partners to accelerate and scale the impact.
Many thanks again, Erin and Alison. And I know this is going to be quite an important point that Elodie also is going to have the opportunity to elaborate on once we get to Elodie. But first, I'd like to turn to Elise. I hope, Elise, you can hear me loud and clear. Hello. So, Elise, you represent a foundation linked to the first and largest Pan-African bank on the continent. We've heard that philanthropy is dead. Can you share why that's far from accurate by explaining how foundations can be real partners too? Over to you, Elise.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much as well to the organizer for accommodating me, to being online today. So I did hear the statement, philanthropy is dead, and at least for where I stand, so I'm this Ecobank Foundation, so the foundation of the largest Pan-African bank based out of Lomé in Togo. So here in the continent, in Africa, philanthropy is far from being dead. On the contrary, we've been seeing an expansion and maybe even a thriving of the philanthropy sector over the past years. And I would like here to share just two numbers to show how the domestic and the regional philanthropy has been rapidly expanded. So the first one is that we have now more than 20 billionaires on the continent, billionaires in USDs. And so it's the largest amount so far. And we also have over 65% of the African nonprofits that are now receiving funds from Africans being on the continent or outside the continent. The corporate foundations are also, or you can see more and more corporates, I should say, that are also creating their foundations. So there is this, there is nowadays a very, so the philanthropy, the African philanthropy sector, if I may put it this way, is evolving a lot, expanding a lot, and is also more and more organized and coordinate, which also I think make it more visible. But the philanthropy and what I think is maybe the particularity of the African philanthropy is that it's not just about funds. So it's not about, I mean, it's also like echoing a bit what my previous panelist just said, but when you look at actual numbers from a funding perspective, it's not necessarily like that high. But where the expertise or the uniqueness of the African philanthropy and foundations stand is very much about the networks, their networks and our networks, and how we actually manage to enable a better coordination of the fragmented efforts, and specifically as we know that the development sector or the humanitarian sector is shifting and evolving quite a lot right nowadays. And it's also about the trust that we have managed to build and that we are building. And I'm not only talking about the trust with the donors, but also the trust with the communities and the local organizations. So we have this network of credible on-the-ground partners that know us, that we know, that we understand, and with this trust, we are also able to provide some de-risking or some guaranteeing support that other organizations might not be able to do so. We also, so the African philanthropy is also, I believe, uniquely positioned to inform, to raise awareness, and to engage. And the reason with the communities, and the reason why I want to also flag that or emphasize that is because we've been often in situations where, for different reasons, where there have been misinformations or misunderstanding of a lot of activities or initiatives that were implemented. And specifically when it comes also like to humanitarian efforts, just because it obviously it all goes very quickly. And so we have the kind of we have this trust and we have the understanding of the local culture, habits, and context that allow us to ensure that the understanding, or that the communities and populations that we are supporting, that are being supported, are well informed and well aware about what is happening. So for me, at least when it comes to the African continent, the philanthropy is definitely not dead. It's actually booming, and there's more and more actors on the continent.
Many thanks, Elisa, and thanks for bringing an important and a different perspective, especially around the role that you're playing, engaging with local actors, with communities, the aspect of trust that is also building the level of confidence of philanthropists to also give more and engage more to support, the respective communities. And it's good to know that from where you sit as well, philanthropy is booming, it's not dead. And I guess one question that maybe as a follow-up question to you also, Elisa, is around, again, and I hear you, it's not just about the financial aspect, but it was also quite revealing to hear you say, if I heard you correctly, that you were able to mobilize through the philanthropy over $20 billion. Do you, are most of these funds largely from large companies on the continent, or is it a mix of small firms, small companies, and medium? Just, it would be good to just get a sense of who's really stepping forward to make these huge contributions to support the respective communities.
Yeah, sure. So let me make a clarification here first. So I was referring to 20 billionaires on the continent, so 20 high net worth individuals now that are also now stepping in as well, and being also being like a stronger, I want to say like respondent as well to the needs on the continent. Now, when it comes to raising funds, and I think. What is interesting is we're looking, so the private sector on the continent is mostly like SMEs, right? So those small and medium enterprises. And for many of them, cash contributions can be a challenge for all different reasons, and I'm not going to go into that now. Happy to respond to it later on. But what is really interesting, and I think it's also like maybe to some extent echoing what other panelists were saying, is that when we take actually the time to talk with those SMEs and to show them that from their core business or from their expertise or from how they operate, they are able to contribute to to humanitarian response or to some development initiatives, they will be engaged very much. And so that's also like ourselves how we are also giving a financial value to what those SMEs are also doing. So I'm just going to give a very quickly example. We had the opportunity to work in Benin with a local telco company, and they actually gave, if I'm able to display, like free SMSs to the government to share some specific messages around humanitarian crisis. And when they were first asked for cash, that's something that was not possible. But giving those free SMSs, actually, you can put a value to it, right? And you can ensure that this is recognized as well as a contribution by the private sector to a humanitarian crisis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elisa. Thanks for the very clear and elaborate response. So that, Elodie, I will turn to you. You're part of MasterCard's senior leadership, and you've been working with the World Food Programme and other UN partners on digital payments for years. We have often discussed the need for some minimum viability or sustainability for companies to maintain their commitments to humanitarian response. How can we build trust around the idea that profit isn't a dirty word, bridging the disconnect between the UN and NGOs and the why around why businesses are engaging in humanitarian efforts and resilience building? So really, in a nutshell, what Erin mentioned earlier, that there has to be it has to be tied to business value. How can we make the case that this is actually not something bad and that we should shy away from?
Thank you. I wanted to start by sharing a more personal experience to prove the point, basically. So I'm responsible for the global emergency response, which at MasterCard means how we leverage our technology, digital payment technology, to support in time of crisis, to move money from A to B for the end beneficiary. So one of the first discovery call I had with a coalition of international NGO, trying to figure out what do you need, guys, where I can fill the gaps, what exactly we could do together. And during the conversation, someone asked me literally, but why are you here, MasterCard? There's no scale, there's no profit, why are you here? And I'm not going to lie, the first time, because it happens a couple of times, the first time I heard that, I was like, it really threw me off. Like, no, simple answer is no, obviously. And it really made me realize that how important and critical, and thank you for giving us the opportunity today, to really articulate and show that the biggest challenge is probably where building or changing some of the partners' perception of the private sector and building trust. I'm not the first one. I know it's been trust. It's been something discussed for all the panel, but it's really, to me, a fundamental one. So back to the not so easy question like dirty profit. I know humanitarian when you feel that they are worried when profit enters the picture. So it's kind of a shift from, we're trying to save life, and this guy is going to try to make money. So probably the best way to argue beyond the no is trying to be very factual. Profit is the difference between what you earn and what you spend. And profit starts at zero. How a company like mine can at least find the break even, so the point where you manage to offset your costs with what you're going to charge to support in time of crisis. And this is, to me, part of this stronger, fully integrated private sector. So we need to better explain how we operate, as I need to better understand how public sector operates. But if I take the example of digital payment infrastructure, like tech, Cisco will probably be the same. But if you want to implement cash and voucher assistance and rely on this kind of networks, you're going to have to, on my side, in terms of costs, there's a technology that you need to integrate, that you need to maintain. You're going to have to provide training and support to the CVA practitioner. You're going to have to pay your partners on the ground, because we are local, we can send money. If we're able to send NGO funds directly into the end beneficiaries is because we build this partnership of telco, of bank, of cash out agent out there that we need to pay. And there is the foreign exchange. And in a volatile environment, there's all this risk. Data security compliance, just to name a few. The list is quite long. But my point is more, obviously, profit is the measure of success for the private sector. That's how you reward your owner or your shareholder by taking the risk to invest in your company. But profit, and again, even starting at zero, is the fuel for investment. And that's really something I'm trying to share with my partners, saying, guys, if I want, and as MasterCard, we're serious about supporting emergency response, I'm going to have to dedicate people to support in time of emergency. I need to bring the expertise of humanitarian work, like I'm trying to do, and bridge the two within my organization. I'm going to have to, certainly, and that's what I'm doing, customizing the processes and the solution that we're having, because it works perfectly for banks, but I'm telling you, we need a little bit of fine-tuning to really address the way it's going to work the most efficient way for the CVA practitioner. And if I want, again, to be serious, I'm going to have to invest of the future capabilities. Just to, crypto, blockchain, we can throw big words here, but it's the matter of making sure how we're going to bring this level of investment and this fuel for investment through what we're doing with our partner.
Many thanks, Elodie. Super clear, and I'm glad that you have the opportunity to demystify and unpack why making profit isn't a dirty word, but it is part of the collaboration. And as you said, profit starts from zero, and there has to be a value to, ultimately, it's the stakeholders that are ultimately investing in the company, and they need to make sure that there is a return. So it is a win-win, because you're providing a service, and at the same time there is a profit to be made there. Lots more questions to ask, but I do have a second round of questions to ask you. But in the interest of time, I would like to also give the opportunity for colleagues in the audience to, if you have any questions, I invite you to raise your hands, and we can take one round of questions from the floor, and then I can do a second round from my end as well. So who would like to kick off the discussions or the questions, colleagues? Rob. We've lost our organizer.
Hi, thank you so much for, my name is Alan Kalma from the Lutheran World Federation. And thank you for, I think Mervat read the questions in our head, because, there's always this question about private sector is profit-driven, and then NGOs, and particularly faith-based organizations such as us, we call ourselves values-driven. Not to say that you guys are not, but I think there's always that gap in trying to figure out, how can we sort of make sure that that collaboration happens? Because the worry is always humanitarian principles. How do we work with the private sector without giving up on our humanitarian principles, but really building up on the strengths of the private sector? I think that's one question. The other question is, Nicholas Rutherford this morning said in his opening remarks that we are at this point in time where the private sector does not want to just be the one donating funds, but being the one at the front line and frontline responder in a response. And I'm just wondering whether you think, because, of course, MasterCard is now doing CVA, helping organizations and stuff. Do you think that it is sufficient, there's sufficient capacity now for the private sector to actually be the frontline responders? And how do you see that future working in terms of the role of NGOs, for example, in this particular future? Thanks.
Many thanks. May I just ask you to introduce yourself if you feel comfortable to do so? And we'll take one or two more questions from the floor, and then we come back, please.
Yes, Alan Kalma from the Lutheran World Federation. Thanks.
Pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much, Alan. Thank you. There's one more question in the back there. I'll pass it on.
Excuse me. Thank you. Andrew Gardner. I'm not affiliated with Edward at the moment, so independent consultant. I heard that one of the difficulties working with humanitarian organisations is an almost accepting that they had to manage risk. But I would actually suggest that one of the biggest issues in the humanitarian world is we've become very risk controlling, and I'd like to know from the private sector how you could teach us how to do better risk management rather than risk control, which is dampening a lot of the opportunities.
Thank you. And I think there was one more question in that same, actually 2 rows forward. One last question, then we'll come back to the panel. Yes, please.
Yeah, Stéphane Jean-Pierre from Catholic Relief Services. I'm private sector engagement advisor. I have first a comment on, it's Elodie. And I joined CRS, I was from the private sector and I joined CRS, and I got that, I'm still getting that kind of comment every time. Why are we working with these big companies? And I go even further. They're gonna make money, so what? What's in it for us? Are we getting our outcomes from the partnership? That's what we should be focusing on. So this is one thing. So my question, which goes into the same direction, is as a private company, apart from the corporate social responsibility, from a business sense, or what are you getting, or like each of you or one of you, from these type of partnerships from a business perspective? Because this is what I want to sell to these companies. It's good for business, your business. So just wanted to.
Many thanks, many thanks. So maybe we'll come back. So a few questions around the value proposition for your respective companies that can be relayed to other companies that we can bring into the equation and the partnership. What can the UN and the humanitarian community learn from you when it comes to risk management? Because we are very risk averse as a system. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions, especially on the cash and voucher assistance, amongst other forms of assistance from the private sector. So curious to know how you handle that. And of course, the question around how do we preserve humanitarian principles and whether the private sector can indeed be at the forefront of the response. Do you have the, I wouldn't say capability, because I believe you do have the capability, but do you have the political will, for lack of another word, to do so? So please go ahead. Yeah.
So excellent questions. Really appreciate the dialogue. Would like to just start by saying, let's be clear, we're in this because we all have the same aim, which is to save lives. We wouldn't be coming to the table for decades at a time, really trying to build these partnerships and understand the needs of our partners and deliver on those needs if we didn't believe in the mission and if we didn't believe it was the right thing to do. To your point, though, about profit, to me, I'm almost not understanding the question, and maybe because all organizations are buying product, you're buying, systems, you're buying, like, it's not like things aren't being purchased, right? Isn't it better to have a strategic relationship with the companies that you're buying from, where you're really co-creating and partnering to understand where there are challenges and gaps and how to do things better together, than it is to just purchase these things one-off with suppliers that are completely a transactional relationship, right? Like, that's why we're doing this work. We're not doing this because this is some huge moneymaker, right? Let's be honest. But it's an area of need, and it's an area where our businesses have real competencies to bear, and that's why we're doing it. We know that we can make a really important contribution. The paradigm has to change. We're at a real inflection point, right, in the humanitarian space. And there's an opportunity for us to partner much more effectively and create sort of a sea change in the way things are done. But it requires welcoming all partners to the table as real partners. And otherwise, we're going to continue in the same game of transactions and not real partnership. But I don't think procurement should be a dirty word. It should be viewed as a bridge to partnership and a way for us to really develop the solutions that are gonna change lives on the ground. So it's my perspective. But yeah.
I'm going to build on that, and I love the question too. Obviously, we're not going to solve it right now, but I think that's exactly the right question. I want to build on what you just said around procurement. Procurement is a safeguard. There's no question to that. It makes sure all the public spending is transparent, it's fair, and to the best interest of the beneficiaries. And so there's no debate around that. What I want to echo what Ellie was saying around, there is probably a different way we could approach this kind of process. And in my world and the way I'm facing it, so I have to go through procurement process. So I'm going to have an RFP. I'm going to have a list of very specific questions, dozens, hundreds sometimes, and I will be evaluated based on my compliance to these KPIs. So room for co-creation, room for innovation, zero. I truly believe that we could think about a more outcome-oriented procurement process. So tell me, guys, tell me, guys, more what you're trying to solve, what you're trying to achieve, and incentivize me or evaluate me on how I can really bring value and impact. So, and there's an expression, I don't know if it's going to resonate, and excuse the French accent, but basically something I apply to me very often is you don't know what you don't know. So if you're, and I have to say, even on the payment, and I'm not 100% in payment, expert in payment. I need my colleagues to really bring the full expertise into the table. But if you don't know what to ask, there's no way you're going to be able to really see the heart of the possible, because it's a very, again, I'm talking payment and finance here, but it's evolving so fast. It's highly regulated. How can you cope? Because you're saving life. So this is where we bring our expertise. But if we don't share more and we don't have this mutual understanding on what you guys need and where you start and when you stop. So to your question, I'm not sure how far the forefront we could go, because you have the expertise, but we should leverage everyone's what we're great at and combine these skills. And for me, another point, I don't think we have addressed it, but there's always this kind of line between talk to global, but no, it has to be locally led. My personal view and the way we're trying to do it at MasterCard is we're trying to get this global approach. So there's things that should be done at the global level. Locally, no question, all the pain points, all the challenges needs to come the community. They know best what they need. But when it comes to design a solution, building it, running it, or measuring it, it's probably a combination of private and public together and global and local together.
+1 to everything you all said. And just to your point about when you're truly partnering and understanding your respective pain points and where you can, collectively come together and learn from each other, I think to answer the question about risk management, I don't know the answer to that, but if in partnership with organizations that is an issue, we're able to pull from resources within our company that do have expertise in that area that can knowledge share. So I think it's another, argument for the importance of co-creating solutions and building partnerships where you're both truly at the table. In terms of value proposition, I think obviously we are all in it for the same reasons. We do have the same social mission, but I think the reality for a lot of companies is it's not entirely altruistic. And even if we're not looking for a return on investment or profitability, in a lot of cases what we're doing is helping build brand loyalty or reputation, or helping with relationships with stakeholders, governments. Even if there's not a direct line to, the support we're providing and profit, there is an indirect line in that it's supporting our reputation, our business. It might be showcasing the application of our products and services and technology for social good. And so all of those things do support our business and do align with our business values.
Elisa, can I turn to you? Do you have any additional comments or perhaps responses? Over to you, please, Elisa. And then we'll do another round of questions.
Thank you. Just a very quick one, actually, from my end, because I think Alison, Elodie, and Erin have already said it all. I think in our case, just maybe because of our geographical location, right? when we think about humanitarian response, I have to say we don't do that much humanitarian response because we are actually quite slow in our process of responding. But we also do it in addition to all what we've just said. We also do it because at the end of the day, it's also about our own stakeholders, like our own clients, so the well-being of the population on the continent. Basically, it's also ensuring that we can have more clients, or that the SMEs that we are working with are supporting have the capacity to grow, and so on and so forth. So it's obviously it's not directly linked to profit per se, but it's also ensuring that we are in an environment where the well-being of the populations is present and is there. So that's also the reason why we do what we do. And maybe also just to echo, I think it's important, this co-construction actually for us is something that is very important, and we also need just to kind of repeat what was just said, we don't know what we don't know, so we really need as well to hear from the experts, so from your NGOs, your faith-based organizations, what they need or how they need it, and we need to be involved in the conversation as early as possible. Like, it's like very usually, and that's something I really would like to emphasize, it happens a lot that people kind of think about us being from the donor side or from the NGO side sometimes, where they're like, oh, by the way, there's also like Ecobank or Ecobank Foundation, maybe they can donate. Yes, we can to some extent, but we would be way more effective if we can really be involved in the conversation from the beginning and very understanding like the needs, and see where we can actually plug in and how we can leverage on our own expertise as well.
Many thanks, Elisa. So we're going to open the floor for another round of questions. I already see one there. And while we're getting the mic there, and please, colleagues, do raise your hand if you want to come in. And there's another question all the way in the back. But while we're waiting for colleagues to come in, a naive question perhaps to the panel, because I completely understand, again, the importance of the value proposition in terms of profit, in terms of brand recognition, amongst other ways of benefiting from this partnership with the humanitarian actors. Is it safe to say, or is it naive to assume that part of it is also to address the morale issue within the private sector? So if you have more staff within the private sector, within your respective companies, that are doing something to support a response to a natural disaster, or for Gaza or for Sudan, do you feel that this is also a value proposition for your respective companies? So in addition to the financial, but there's also the moral aspect as well. But that's one question. We're going to hear two more questions from colleagues.
Hi, my name is Emmanuel Joseph. I am a pastor of a church that takes care of humanitarian aid. My question to the panel is, and anybody can answer that, is the private sector facing some sort of resistance when it comes to partnering with faith-based organizations? Or do we see any major changes happening? Because right now I see that there's sort of a resistance when it comes to faith-based organizations just because of the religious beliefs. So do you want to comment on that a little bit, or just let us know what you think about such partnerships?
Thank you. Okay, there's another question all the way in the back. There's one more question in the back row.
Hello, my name is Karthi. I work for Visa. So I think my question is actually more on, I think, Elodie, you really clearly mentioned about how, profits can be a fuel to investment from partners, technology providers, donors, etc. And it can really accelerate how the aid ecosystem becomes more resilient, more efficient. And I think I would like to ask all of you on how, you guys are trying to get the internal buy-in and investment, because that's always very difficult, and people in the NGO or NGO sector may not really understand, because when there's like 1 million and one other sectors that are more fancy, more sexy to invest in, how do you actually get its senior stakeholders internally to get the buy-in to kind of really accelerate our business initiatives in the humanitarian aid sector? Yeah.
Very, very, very interesting question. And again, it's refreshing to hear a question from someone also who works in the private sector, because as you pointed out, this is some of the blind spots that we have as a system. So to repeat, colleagues, it's about how do you make the case internally within your respective companies to make the decision to invest and to work with the UN and specific sectors rather than investing in other probably more profitable endeavors. So that's one super interesting question. So good to get a better understanding of the dynamics and the hard work that you have to do internally to get that buy-in. And then the colleague who asked the first question was around whether there are any challenges that you face in terms of working with or through faith-based organizations. And then the question that I had about staff and morale and corporate social responsibility. So we're going to do another round amongst you. Perhaps, Erin, would you like to kickstart this time?
Sure. And also to answer your first question or follow-up question around morale, I think that's absolutely another reason why I think managing the types of programs and partnerships we do is important. I think to attract talent, retain talent, to make sure that the employees believe in the company and believe that they're working for a company that is doing good in the world. I think there was a recent survey that found that in the US, over 50% of employees will only work for an employer that they believe is a good corporate citizen. And I think it's increasingly important for the younger generations as well. And so I think that absolutely is another argument for companies to invest in these types of partnerships and initiatives. And I can answer.
Yes. So Elodie, after you, we're going to turn to Elisa so that she doesn't come in. So please go ahead.
I'm just going to build on what Erin just said. Is it an HR retention tool? Big time. Big time. So you share the value. It's the US, but I'm pretty sure, the common ground will be for pretty much all the countries. And that's something I just want to raise to prove again that we're serious. It's part of our value, shared value with the humanitarian space that we, at least at MasterCard, but there's many other out there, we want to support and we want to help. And one of the key examples would be we are more than 30,000 employees at MasterCard around the world. Every single employee have 5 days for volunteering every year, paid off time, to do either supporting emergency response, giving their expertise, professional expertise, or even up to supporting the local initiatives. So in our world, in our CSR report, if you want to name things, that's absolutely critical, and that's definitely part of the strategy. Just wanted to.
Perfect. Okay, Elodie, if you don't mind, we're going to turn to Elisa in case Elisa has any additional, comments. But colleagues, I just want to loop back again to the question from the colleague in the end about the efforts that you have to make internally within your respective companies or organizations or foundations to make the case to invest in the humanitarian sector rather than other sectors that might be more profitable. So Elisa, we'll turn to you and then back to Alice.
Sure, thank you very much. So as far as I know, there is no study for Africa in terms of how, when you have like CSR or social impact, like how it can help attract or maintain staff. But now this being said, so the reason I'm saying that is because I don't have like a study per se and numbers that I can share with the audience. But what I do know is that so Ecobank as a bank is a young bank. So it's the first bank created by Africans for Africans, but it's a young one because it's 40-year-old. So we're celebrating 40th anniversary this year. And the same, the founders of Ecobank, so the same group of people who said, hey, we want to create this bank, they also very soon said that, or very early in the process said that they didn't only want to be a profitable institution focusing on economic growth and regional integration. They also said that they wanted to ensure that they can have a positive impact on their communities. And so that's how they created the foundation. So as much as we don't have data per se to share on that, this being a so-called do-good institution, if I may put it this way, has been always part of our DNA. Now, it doesn't mean that it's always easy. So the Ecobank Foundation is very much integrated into the group, and there is to respond to the point that was made by the person from Visa, I believe. There is indeed some internal buy-in to do, and I am asked sometimes the question why why allocating those resources to something that is not going to bring any profits or direct profits versus something else. And I think it's there's also like a lot of questions about education, if I may use this word, and as much as we do have colleagues and leadership and staff that are very much engaged, sometimes there are also like some tough calls that needs to be made. But it's still part of our DNA, and I think that's for me something that we are also showcasing a lot, and also that's also what we are trying also to promote or encourage as well, like our fellow partners to do. And actually, I just would like to add that on the continent now, a lot of most of the banks now have also CSR activities and or through their foundations. The reason why I want to flag that it's because in most of the countries in Africa, it is not regulated, so there's no framework like legal obligations to do it or any fiscal incentives to do it. So I think it's important to flag that. I also wanted to respond to, I think, to the second question about the faith-based organization. Well, at least where we stand, we work with also, obviously we have like a due diligence process that we go through, but faith-based organizations are not a question at all in terms of whether working with them or not. On the contrary, we do work quite a lot with them.
Many thanks.
Sorry, if I just one last thing.
Go ahead.
Just in terms of also like the working with the UN and some of the other INGOs, and that's maybe also a call that I'm making to the ones that I can hear the plea, that the infrastructure sometimes in collaborating with them, and specifically when it comes to financial support, can be quite heavily and not necessarily straightforward when you are already on the continent, because in a lot of cases the flow, so the contributions will have to be made in dollars or euros, and the money will have to go back to the headquarters before coming back to the continent. And so I'm just making the plea here. Well, if it can be possible to ease or maybe like smooth the transaction, so then it can remain at the level of a country. Thank you.
Many thanks again for this, Elisa. Alison, please go ahead.
Great. So I'm going to do my best actually to combine your question around engagement of our stakeholders and then your question around how do you make the case for why a company should invest in this work as a business proposition as opposed to any other opportunity that the business has. So for us, when we think about creating shared value, we think about, yes, we have our shareholders, but we have a whole ecosystem of stakeholders that fuel our success. That includes our 26,000 team members. It includes the 4,000 manufacturing partners that we work with. It includes the millions and millions of healthcare providers and systems that are our customers. And it includes society. And for us, when we can find those issues that we can work on to make the world a better place that resonate with each of those stakeholders, and we can find a pathway for them to participate in an overall effort to do good things, we fuel our own success. It's a flywheel because those are the stakeholders that fuel our success, right? Without our team being loyal and excited and want to be a part of something bigger and purpose-driven, we're not going to be a successful company. Without customers customers who believe that we are a good company to do business with, that we're trustworthy and that we share values, they're not going to come to us as their first partner that they know they can rely on. And the same with our manufacturing partners. And so to me, that's part of the magic. It's not easy. It's not easy to make the equation of doing well and doing good work out. But that's why we all do this work, because we believe in it and we believe that we can make that equation work. And actually, we can use it to fuel innovation and to do good things that will move the needle and not just be transactional. And in the end, we do surveys of our team. We do something called a pulse survey every year. We do surveys of our customers. What do they most value about us as an employer, as a business partner? Our commitment to this work often figures pretty high in those surveys. People really do care about being part of something bigger and transacting with a company that they believe cares about something bigger. And so I think that that's the flywheel and the magic we try to create. And again, because it's not easy, it requires us to create trust-based relationships with one another over time to figure out how to do that best to serve everyone's needs and to move the needle in the best way we can.
Super. Very, very nice way of concluding the response to this set round of questions. And colleagues, I'm mindful that we have 3 minutes to go. And so I would like us to conclude on a positive note, if I can say so, although all the discussion was positive because it was honest, it was transparent, it was direct, and that's the type of dialogue that we need to have to build on the strength of the relationships that we already have. So if you were to say, again, final words of wisdom or advice, from your perspective, the one thing that needs to be done to ensure that within your respective company or foundation, we can scale the collaboration and the partnership with the humanitarian sector to a completely different level, what is the one thing that needs to change? What would we need to do things, how would we need to do things differently? And it could be from your side or the humanitarian side or both, from both ends. So final words of wisdom before we wrap up this session. And I see Alison is already ready to go. So that will give everyone else the chance to have a few more moments of thought. So over to you, Alison. Yeah.
These are definitely not going to be wise words, so you set this up in an unfair way. But I would say we need to move from transaction to transformation. We have to move from just straight procurement to co-creation. On a positive note, I think we've moved very far in the last few years. I think the entire way that we're working together has really, we've moved the needle. But I think we're sort of in the middle, and there's the next level we can get to, because we're in an inflection point. We're in a moment that we can't continue to do things exactly as we always have. And so let's turn the dial just a bit and really try to transform our relationship to that trust-based partnership where we come to the table, understand each other's challenges, and create solutions together that are going to advance the needle.
Great. Many thanks, Alison. I'll turn to Elisa. Elisa, any final words before we conclude?
That's very hard now, but I think, Alison, I said it all, but I think, as I was saying in my introduction, the African philanthropy sector is booming, and there's much and more actors, persons, and entities who are ready to play their role, and so from both sides, I think it's important that we can talk to each other and that we can actually really understand each other, and from our side understanding like the actual needs, and from like, let's say that the humanitarian side, like the actual requests, or maybe the way around, I should have said it. But for me, let's ensure that we can talk before there's actually the next crisis, so that there's time to really find the right position and the right way forward. Thank you.
Many thanks, Elise. Elodie?
Okay, I'll be short because I'm going to echo what this lady just said. So come and talk to us to build this heart of the possible so we all better serve the one that need it most, I think would be.
Perfect. Nicely said, Elodie. And Erin?
going last, I have nothing novel or new to say, but just to reiterate, I think we are at an inflection point. We are at a time where needs are greater than ever, and funding continues to contract. And so, I do think we need to explore a new paradigm and a new way to partner. And so, I do think really coming to the table and problem solving and true collaboration across the sector, across private, government, nonprofit sectors to reimagine the future is needed.
Brilliant. Many thanks again, Erin, Elodie, Alison, and Elise. A round of applause, colleagues, for our fantastic panel. This was really, really, really eye-opening, I know for certain for me. And it's the type of dialogue that we need to continue to have, because this level of openness, this level of frankness is absolutely essential for us to be able to build partnerships between, again, the humanitarian and the private sector, and we need it now more than ever. So many thanks again to all of our panelists, to Rob for helping us today as well, and for our audio colleagues, and for all of you for being here and making this a great interactive session. All the best, colleagues.
Indeed.